Hello, greetings and welcome everybody. Dave Darrington here, back once again for one last time in 2022. Thank God it's almost over, friends. We are free, right? No, I'm just kidding. Today, welcome to Working Out Loud. Again, this is a show where we like to talk out loud about some of the biggest technical education problems in B2B and B2B, B2C software as a service. What I like to do in this show, again, just to reframe, every time we do this show, we bring in a professional that knows something about the puzzle, this mesh, this fabric of technology and the learning that goes into it for this market. If you're not learning, I like to say you're churning. That means me as a consumer of technology, of all the products that I have to use as an education professional in the software industry, I need to know more about. That's what we're here to do. So today, whether this is pre-recorded, whether it's live, please ask questions. I'm going to bring my friend TJ Randall in here. TJ, welcome. Can you introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll get into an awesome discussion today.
Nice. And you're right. Here we are at the end of the year. Well, thanks for having me, Dave. I'm TJ Randall, and I'm the Chief Customer Success Officer at Instruqt. I have a long history in IT. I started in the enterprise. I always say 17 years in the enterprise, and then switched to the startup. So it's been quite a journey for myself. But one of the things I'm super passionate about is talking about getting customers hands-on. Being in customer success, I always get to say that we get to do things for real. So it's a fun part of the journey where it's like, okay, now they own it. Let's get it running.
I love it. Okay, TJ, great. That's a great place to start. Now you own it. Let's get it running. I want to share something before I even do the frame up today. Mm-hmm. So on another podcast I do with Adam Evermescu, who's a VP of Education at Personio, we do C-Lab, the Customer Education Podcast. And now that I've read this book, this is a historical book, first customer education book we can find from 1984. And some of the things, I wanted to bring this up kind of organically because leading up to this conversation, we're looking back 40 years, 40 years of time in software and even manufacturing and pharmaceuticals. People back in the day were calling this customer education. And they had the same problem we had today, TJ, which is, oh my goodness, this software we make, you as a leader in your organization, Instruqt, this is amazing software. It can do so much. They're there to solve problems. But connecting to that is very difficult. We've been trying to get this resonant understanding of how do we approach learning for busy, harried people in software who are managing, 9 or 10 different applications, and they have to know how to use these things. And in this book, they're talking about these processes to do so. I might bring a couple examples in there from today, but let's frame this up. I'm going to put my educator hat on. Here I am pretending myself as a manager, senior manager, people person, right? I have a team. We're trying to take a really complicated product, and I want to train you, TJ. And I don't have access to you. COVID happened. Guess what? We see less of people. It's wow. You can't just I can't just reach across to you and go tap you on the back as you're walking past my desk where I have a lab in front of me, right? I used to do this all the time. You go into the computer lab and we do things, and I go, TJ, hey, instructor, I can't figure this out, and we have a great conversation. I know, light bulb moments, all these things happening. That's not happening. As a senior leader working to help deliver that kind of training, I don't have access to people. I need to do this also at scale. There's hundreds, thousands of people. I'm working at a growing company. The problem I have today with training, where I can actually reach out and train you or call or do a Zoom or something, that gets harder when you have thousands of people, thousands of smart TJs out there who are going to ask me brilliant questions that I'm not going to be able to answer. So that's the point. We are at a hard swallow moment where we need to understand the technology that can help unlock the next step. And I want to talk today about this. How do we navigate a course in the future of technical learning?
Yeah. I think, for sure. And the way that you frame it up, one of the things, I think my enterprise background, I carry that forward a lot in the way that I think about these things too, because to your point, you're trying to solve a problem, right? You have to educate thousands of people, and you're really talking about transformational education. It's not just like,
I like it for that.
Here's the new widgets, and here's your new, like here's your new timekeeping system, and this is how you're going to do it in the new way. I think a lot about like, how do these people like learn in a way that says, here's how we used to do it, here's how we're going to do it now. And that type of transformational learning, that's hard. You really have to think through, like, the saying that my staff has heard me say 1,000 times is, they know how to feed their kids doing it a certain way, right? This is how they do their job. Now we have to teach them that new way. And it's our responsibility as leaders to really think about, like, what does that transformation look like? And it's not just going through some screens in the software. That's, the software is cool, but it's also like, that's really not the whole thing.
No, I like how you put that. Here's a hook that I think we were talking about before. The concept of learning-driven development.
Yeah.
Right. We were talking back early in 2022. We kicked off the year. Now we're ending the year, and we're going to hopefully kick off.
Right. Yeah.
February. Here's a phenomenon that's been happening that I think is fantastic. And going back to how I led in, I remember a younger me who was 20s, maybe early 30s, had free time, didn't have so many kids. I would go to community colleges or local universities and take these courses on, like my favorites, Unix. I got certified or a credential on Unix, and I learned how to administer the Unix environment. Same thing for Windows. Same thing for understanding basic, Linux commands and things like that. How do I build a database? How can I do it from the command line? I'm that kind of nerd. But to do that was an entree to leading into a software package that I would be using forever. I became a SQL Server DBA. I ended up being somewhat of a master on Excel. I learned very sophisticated. I was a chemist, a scientist. Learned these analytical systems, which they're weird. They were like a combination of calculus and drawing, and I didn't even know how to describe that. I would like have a peak shape, and I draw a line under that peak shape, and it would say, compare this to that, it's 98% pure chemical that you're looking at. Learning, that learning thing, TJ, has been such an integral part of my life, and it's been so hard.
Yeah. The other piece of that too is I think about, so you take those classes, and so like you become Unix certified, right? Then you go, this happens in my world today. It happened to me when I was at Xebia Labs before. You're talking about, like, let's say a large financial institution, and they only hire the best Unix developers out there, right? They can get great talent, and they bring them in-house, and they say, well, you already know Unix, you're certified in it. Now you have to know how to do that here, right? So it's like, you know what I mean? There's the way the bank does it, because again, they have regulatory requirements, they have systems that they've set up over the years, etc. So that learning, and that's where I think you were going with the kind of the learning based development, learning driven development, is when you think about solving problems, you actually have to solve it in that frameworks, right? So it's Unix at Acme. Which doesn't seem like, it seems kind of strange to say, but I think that's kind of how the world works. One of the things that makes me think of, it's kind of tangential, but like, because I'm a little bit more experienced in the, I say in the IT world, right? We've been doing this for a little while. How often do people come to you, Dave, and say like, hey, my kids just want to break into IT. What should they do? And they think about like certification courses. I think those are great, but they're still, as you know, going to have a hard time getting into that first job, because somebody then has to hire them and say, oh, okay, you're certified in X. Now we have to give you an opportunity to do that. So it's like twofold. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're really evoking some strong emotions and pain, right? And if I were to pull this thread through for us for this discussion, I'm thinking of a conversation I had with Nick Mehta from Gainsight, CEO of Gainsight. And I spent time at Gainsight several years building their program, and I learned so much about this space. So thinking about this, there's one of the things we were struggling with at the time, and I think this is really evocative and can help lead our discussion. A platform like Gainsight to an end user looks very simple, or not simple, straightforward. I can grok it. Let's use that term. Look at it, go, oh, I know what to do with that. You can go about your day, but you're an end users, right? Somebody has filled in the blanks, the enculturation of your company, the governance and rules and regulations that are behind that, that's an administrator, a technical user.
Yeah.
And those are the people I think that we are talking about. Those are the people that are like, okay, I need a platform to solve this problem, TJ.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I know what I'm doing, but now guess what's going to happen? I am flipping out because I went to your class, I took your on-demand video, like, I get that, cool. And then I sit down in front of the screen. You know what? I could wipe out my database. I could screw up the records. I could, and where's the bag? You know, like I'm like, I've had these moments in my career before where I knew all this stuff, but now I actually have to like maybe do a database rollback, or my manager's saying, hey, we're going to take this financial data and we're going to do this and delete these records, and things are going to change. And that's, I think, the point where we're at. We're like, okay, I got to the end of the, you're looking down over the chasm here. How do we now help position our software? Now I'm a vendor. Okay. I'm hoping I'm setting this up right, because I'm like trying to paint a picture of pain and frustration.
Sure.
Vendor side, I'm looking at that admin like, oh boy, okay, I feel your pain, Dave. I have a platform that can solve this pain. But, well, darn it, I'm like, how do I even show you this platform? How do I let you feel like you can understand it, to connect, to solve with the problem that you've got, have practice to solve with that problem, and then you go do it.
Right.
So that is an obligation and a responsibility this is like C-level thinking kind of stuff. Like, how do I connect the dots? Because I want to, again, use learning to drive lead gen. I want to use learning to drive the success, the growth of my company from a product basis. See what I'm doing here? The bulleting points. Okay, let's start with that. Let's start with learning and lead generation. Here I am. I'm a vendor. I have a product. Over on the other side, I have tons and hundreds or thousands of people that want to need my product. They don't know about it.
Right.
Where's the middle?
Right. Well, one of the things I always think, like, we've been kind of like the book, the customer education book, none of this is new, right? And
it's new and not new. Yeah.
It's new and not new, exactly. And I always think of it as like, like free trials are a perfect example of where I go with that. Like, for myself, even if your approach to this learning is just to say like, hey, we'll give you an environment, we'll give you a free trial, go ahead and jump in there. I think, as we all know, like, we get to that point where you're like, well, that doesn't necessarily, it works. It's great because you're giving the user access to that, but they probably have day jobs as well, right? So how much dedicated time are they going to be in there focused on it, right? And I think that's where like learning driven development starts to come in. It's like, imagine a world where like the developers even are somewhat responsible to convey like the power of the features, like how those features of the products help solve that. When you start getting in that mode, all of a sudden it's not free anymore. Now you need like a learning experience, whether that's guided, like you were talking about, like the large workshops where like companies get together and they have an instructor, or whether that's self-paced. You can see that's really the movement. That's that kind of PLG-ish kind of movement, which is like, let me get it in the hands of Dave. Dave has a problem. Then the goal is he looks at the solution, says, oh yeah, this is how I can solve this. This is how I can like think about solving it. So that's great. That's step one. And then to me, having a very strong guided experience I'm very passionate about that. Obviously, I work at a company that helps drive that, but I can give you an example. At my last role, I ran customer success at Exivia Labs, which is now digital.ai. And we would have to train, for example, like release managers. So somebody who's not, they work in a technical role, they're not developers, but they needed the same hands-on kind of experience to translate from how do I deliver software using Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoint, Microsoft Project, into our product, which was called Excel Release.
Yeah.
And it took even our developers would have to think about that. Like, yeah, how do we create that kind of training? How do we create that learning experience? That's actually when I got introduced to Instruqt. And the reason I loved it so much is I could guide those users in a very hands-on kind of way to say, okay, today, when you schedule a release meeting to say, like, we're going to deliver code next Thursday, this is what it looks like in Excel. And they would go, yeah, this is what it looks like here at, Acme Bank. Yeah. Okay, this is what we now have to build in the tool so you get the same results. I think that kind of learning driven development, like helping them understand the path that they're going to take, that's the secret sauce, because then they can go, oh, this is how I'm going to do this in the new world. I'm not just a Unix certified person. Now I can write Unix based code in my company, or I know how to be a project planner in this world. Now I can do it within my company. Does that kind of speak to what you were talking about?
Yeah, we're contextualizing the experience of learning and making it real. I think this is unlocking the golden ticket of education in SaaS, which is, I want you to be able to do something. And I want you to be able to do it with confidence and authority, and to be able to say, look, I think this is evocative, or this is leading us into the how learning can drive lead generation.
Yes.
Which is, for me now as a vendor or a solutions provider or services provider, I need to have that. I need to have that way for you, TJ. Like I want you to see my thing, right? And I want you to test the thing. So I give you an environment. It's online. It's free, maybe. Usually it's going to be free because it's a demo. And I go, here's my environment. Go have fun with it and play with it, but then maybe bring some serious data in, and then maybe try to do some stuff. And then what you're starting to see is who was it? I think it was one of the vendors that I was reading about in this book was talking about, and all of them talk about this kind of universally. The customer, an educated customer, is our best customer.
Yeah. Because
this is one of the platforms. Some of the providers here, services, would say, well, we value education for one particular thing. We package it, we put it in for free, we build all these services around. Yeah, I know what it was. It was a blood banking company. You would know them today. They're still around. They would do all this training and stuff for free usually, and just put it out there for anybody to consume. And then what they found is what a customer would churn. They would go, oh, I'm not getting invited to these conferences and these workshops or seminars or classes or whatever, because the company would just make that part of the thing. They would send out newsletters. They would send out all this stuff and offer all this amazing training for free.
Yeah.
But it kept customers. It kept them coming back, kept growing these customer bases, so that by bringing this platform of training and education and making it in concert with the platform, you were driving those leads back into the company. They were always there. They're like, we hear your brand, we see it, we want to use it. Oh, now I've played with it. Now I'm here. Now let's talk about, and we've filled the funnel.
Right.
Now let's talk about the next stage of that, which is really, now I'm a company. I need to grow my company. I have this great software. This is product-led growth, right?
That's right. And I think from lead generation perspective, we always say, like, right at the end of the day, the CMO's job is incredibly hard. There's never enough leads. There's never enough good leads, right? No matter what they do, it's almost like their existence. Where I think that's where I get passionate about like learning and education is, imagine if you were able to say like, okay, here's 3 leads and all 3 of them did a free trial because that's what they're offering, right? But imagine if you could look at those 3 people and say, well, okay, number 1, it looks like they kind of just went through pretty quickly. They just kind of took a look at your software and then they left. Number 2, they logged in, they did one, maybe did 1 or 2 things that you hoped they would do. They left. The third one came back 3 times and completed, a real evaluation of your software. Are those 3 people leads? Yes, of course. We want to talk to them, understand like what's going on there. But imagine being able, like a CMO, be able to give that credibility of the people that your sales team that you're going to hand off. Right at the end of the day, that's what they're doing. They're gathering leads so that salespeople can engage with them in a meaningful way. Imagine those 3 conversations. As a salesperson, I would imagine the first person you still have to kind of figure out like, is this something you're interested in? And fast forward to the third person, they obviously have something they're trying to solve. So in a really nice way, this educated, qualified lead, is that where you're going with that? Yeah.
Yeah, you saw me typing that in there.
Like, imagine just a CMO being able to say, look, I'm filling your funnel. I'm giving you the best leads I can give you. We're trying to fish for them. And also I can give you credibility, you're right, is like almost the wrong word. It's not that they're not credible. It's just more of like how interested in the experience that you actually gave them. Right?
You're unlocking something new. It's not completely new, but this phrase, when I was typing that in, you were talking about it, and like, you have a lead that's coming from education. You have to generate leads from education. How I want to say it like 1,000 times that is novel. That is a new. That's the future.
Yeah.
That. And I want to go back to this before we get any further. I've got to express how important this is. If you've like that third person, that person in your scenario, not only looked at some videos, they're not a customer, they're not a prospect.
Yeah,
keep that in mind. They're and this is something that TJ I've seen that here's a story that makes it a click. I remember again 6-7 years ago, I was at Gainsight. I had been building some programs, and what we had done in that environment, particularly because of how cool the platform was, I can connect all my data sources, the product data, telemetry, the education data, and the CRM data. So I had some blank spots in there. I see people in my system, but I can't, CRM's not picking them up. I don't know who they are.
Right.
The domain isn't show. It's a Gmail address. Who is this person?
Right.
And I would see them walking through the system. And for me, the system is my education stack, the software stack, and I could chart a course. So that was pretty sophisticated. This isn't something that you have to build to. And that's, we talk about that a lot at Service Rocket and C-Lab. But the remarkable thing, TJ, was that I found this person and I emailed them and I called them.
Yeah.
It was a young man who was in university who said, I am really excited about this, about customer success ops. I want to be a CS ops person. Okay. Wow. Okay. You found that out and wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
And I got into a conversation. Well, why? What's interesting to you? What do you think you need to learn? Again, now we're surveying people and talking to our field.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? This is a growing field, and I've watched customer success be a big deal. I see that jobs are out there. I don't know where I'm going with my college degree. That's irrelevant. I want to go get a job and work for a company supporting Gainsight. And this I'm going to say kid, this young man, went through all of the really complicated stuff. And at the time, TJ, you'll love this, because we were working on a Salesforce stack, we could instantly roll a test environment out, a demo environment.
Right. Right.
So that was the key at the time. I didn't even think about this going into this, but that was the key to me that unlocked the capability of, you're learning a substrate layer. I'm talking like a chemist. The catalyst is this person, and they engage with your learning module. And now they're clicking, going back and forth with your platform. They're doing real things. They're setting real things up in an environment where they can even play with the data. This young man now has skills translatable to a job.
Right. That's right.
And you have a potential customer, because guess what? They learned to get those skills. And that was the point I was trying to make about the customer education book. These platforms 40 years ago were saying education for software drives loyalty. And by getting that out there in the hands of people and unlocking the capability of actually really using it, now that's leading product growth.
Yeah. And imagine, I always think of like you were giving the example earlier, right? So if you're in a job role where you could accidentally drop a database, and oh my goodness, looking over the chasm, right? But imagine if your product, one of the features that it had is like a really great rollback experience. I'm obviously stretching a little here, but imagine that's the hands-on experience that you actually want to share when you give away product for free. It's not, oh, here's some product and you can log in. It's like whether you're generating leads or even generating a free experience. It's like, hey, are you in a role where you have to do these types of things? If you can give meaningful experiences in your education, which is, I think, where content creators, that's where their hearts are. They want to give these meaningful experiences to show you that. And you marry that with software where it's amazing, these different products. I'm a Gainsight user from a former role as well. The things that you can do there are incredible. It's not, I don't need to show you where the buttons are. Here's how you look at a customer. Here's how you look at this. It's here's how you would drive a successful QBR with a customer. Building out the right people to arrive at that. And you can do that in the software. Imagine that's a brand new user who's never seen that tool. That's one of the things they have to do to try to understand this free trial. Those, you're exactly what you're saying. Those people become great references. They become great leads. They probably become great customers because they can identify their world with how this is going to solve it.
that can identify their world. I love these things. Can you do me a favor and let's step back a bit, because while I love using shorthand of things like PLG, and I even love the terminology, product-led growth, things like that. Can we back up a minute for anybody listening and say, well, what does that actually mean? What is product-led growth, and why are we getting education into the mix?
Well, I think the big thing with product-led growth that is just amazing. It's kind of like finally you get that big breath of fresh air. It's not just like offer a free version and just stick it out there for people to try. The goal of PLG at the end of the day is to say the entire company is involved in this effort. So you'll have, you're offering your product and your solutions to the community to have them come in, but you basically force yourself as a company to think about, like, who has a role, like what is my role with that person who's going to interact with the software. I'll give a real world example. I'm in customer success. So in a lot of organizations, people say, well, okay, that's post sales. Well, I can tell you here, and I can tell you how I've done it previously, is most customers, once they've identified their pain, once they've identified the technical win, they're like, oh yeah, this solution, we'll call it the gonculator. This gonculator, this is what we want to do as a company. We love it. This is the right solution. The next things they think about is like, how am I going to run this in my environment? How am I going to set it up? What type of team? So I know as customer success, I have a lot of those stories. That's what I do day in, day out with our customers. Yeah. So in a pre-sales motion, CS becomes kind of important. From a product-led growth and strategy approach, that means that I, in customer success, for everybody that comes in for that trial, that engagement of the software, I have a role that I have to play there. And, for me right now, the role is I'm available for customers when they want to have those questions. So like we run Slack here, and we'll see that. We'll have a customer comes in and says, hey, I tried out the trial. This is phenomenal. This is what we're trying to do. And they kind of like it that they talk to customer success to be like, well, let me tell you how some other companies have solved that same thing. So that to me is PLG at its finest, is everybody in the company has a role in terms of kind of selling the software. And I love it because education probably plays the biggest role, simply because they're the ones who are really building that experience layer. It's not just the software anymore. It's also like, hey, we're so glad you found it. How can we help you? How can we guide you through that?
You said, I have to unpack this a lot, because you said a lot of really different and unique things in our conversation that you don't hear often enough in business. So let's talk the language of business here. Yeah. This is something I'm always trying to do with customer education, because education seems to get orphaned and removed from executive oversight. Yeah. And so if you're an exec and you're listening to this, I want to say this again. This is my personal view on it, but I think it's accurate, that if you don't lead with your educational strategy, and what I mean by that is, okay, I'm CEO. I have a 500 person organization. I have a technical product. I have customers that are struggling. I have customers struggling to prospects that are struggling. You're painting customer success in a picture that's fundamentally different from how the linear view of success is normally construed, which is marketing, sales engineering, implementation, and then we get to customer success, right? Yeah. But now you flip the script. Yeah. And you know what? It makes sense, and it's refreshing to be able to say, now customer success is not embedded in just my post-sales function, because making a customer successful before they're a customer is part of my job. They see the value, they understand it, they connect with the value prop. They see a use case, and this is okay. I have to do this. This is part of my shtick. I got to show my screen and kind of pitch the platform that we've been working on here. Sorry. The thing that we do we've been doing at Service Rocket, and I've been really passionate about. I can't speak. It is Friday, and we're going into the holidays. That's right. Is what is your strategy, right? We don't slow down enough in education, and we haven't been part of the executive functioning enough to really connect. and this is what I mean. The program that we have today, TJ, I think you'll like, and I want to get back to our discussion because this is 100% relevant to everything that we do in these workshops. So we run workshops. We have an advisory program where we come in and we would say, okay, let's lay everything out. Let's lay everything out, TJ. Let's talk about your whole platform. Let's talk about the experience of that learner. And let's talk about it from the beginning. How do they find us? What is it they're trying to do? They being the customer. Right. What looks like success? So you are talking about the customer success lifecycle from the get-go. And in this program, I say customer education is customer success. That's why I really wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
That we need to think differently about this journey. And I'm not going to go much further here, but there's all of this stuff happening, all this stuff that you need to do to really build this substrate, this fabric of learning for your customers. And it begins with education, because if you're not teaching a customer what your value is, they're never going to know, right? You have to build that strategy. What comes next? How do I do that? So what I want to talk about next, I'm going to get off of my promotional junk, but I want to talk about the how does this all happen? Like, what does it look like? What is an ideal not kicking the tires kind of thing? How do we bring people in to a platform environment? Okay, maybe we do this a different way. I'm trying to set it up so that we can get into talking a little bit about the Instruqt platform and how it solves a problem. Maybe we jump over to talk about the Bobs. Oh, no audio here.
The Bobs. There's a lot of Bobs going on.
Yeah. You think that's a good place to start? Let's start with this concept of doing more with less.
So I was just before the podcast we were talking this week, and I said that even to our team is, unfortunately the Bobs, everyone knows the Office Space reference, right? But as we all know, we read the news, we see the economy. There's a lot of those Bob conversations, unfortunately, happening out there today. There we go. The Bobs. Yep. And I'm not making light of it at all. It's actually really challenging environment to be in right now. The thing I think a lot about is there's always that day after when, after that has occurred, let's say there's been a series of layoffs or, reductions. And, the leader of the sales department goes to the CRO and says, well, now that yesterday happened, so what are our new numbers? What are we doing in the new quarter? And the CRO or the finance team says, well, the numbers haven't changed. So it's an unfortunate fact. I don't know if you're seeing that as well, but it's kind of what happens. We got to keep going. So all of a sudden doing more with less is like a real thing inside of these organizations. One of the areas that we focus on a lot at Instruqt is the lead generation side, the product-led growth side, the product marketing side. And you say, man, how are we going to do that? How are we going to create great experiences there? So I think the biggest part of it is like when we think about those product engagements, you really now are under a lot more pressure to show the value of your software without somebody there to point it out. You know what I mean? Your traditional sales cycle where you have a demo led by a really great SC, that may not be able to happen as often. So now in the doing more with less, you're like, all right, how do I set up a environment in which a brand new prospect who has no contact with anybody spins it up and in 5 minutes goes, in probably less than 5 minutes, right? Our attention spans are small. They look at it and they go, this is exactly what we're talking about. This is what we're trying to solve. And this is why I get passionate about Instruqt, is that we provide the environments and the guided experiences to allow customers to showcase that. Instruqt at the end of the day, I always joke, is like a great baseball umpire. You don't even really know they're there half the time. And then until afterwards, and you're like, man, this has been a great experience. What am I using? And then they go, oh, you're using Instruqt. But does that kind of segue into what you're thinking with the doing more with less?
Yeah, I think here's the biggest problem that I've had over time. And let me tell you a story of how I tried to solve this. I'm going to talk out loud about this. And this was my own personal narrative. So I find myself at a platform which they got acquired. I'm not going to talk about the name, but the platform was an integration platform. It was really hard, TJ. Oh my God, it was so hard. I mean, I was a physics and chemistry nerd back in college, and I got a master's degree in computational chemistry. So I like to think I'm not I think I got a couple brain cells. So I can dust them together a little bit and get some things done.
Sure.
But I think that if I go back in time now and I think about the kind of platform that you are developing and how it's filling a niche in our ecosystem that's much needed.
Yeah.
Here's my scenario. I'm one person. I'm not getting a team.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I got a director title, whatever. I was still an independent contributor. And I had a very technically sophisticated platform that the problem, and this came straight from the mouth of the CEO. It's like, our users can't learn this. It's too hard. And so where I entered into this company, this is an interesting story. We got plenty of time. I love telling stories. So I had been a power user of this platform, and I'd used it at my former role. And I used it really well. So I could connect this to this and do this and do this. And I get so passionate about it, TJ. I'm like, I want to teach other people how to use this because it unlocks such value for me. And I did a webinar with this company, and you get to the end of it and they go, can you come work for us? And why was it special? Why was it a unique moment? It was because I connected to the value prop. That could have been any person who had that in that same moment in time who had said, I get this and I get this and I get this. I do these things and it works.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was the beginning. I got it with my data. Now the holy grail is, the hard part is, TJ enters. I'm the trainer. COVID happened. I can't talk to you. We really need to sit down together. And I'm like, you got a workstation, I got a workstation. We share our screens, we share a mouse. We're working on this stuff. We can get through and then you go, after a day or two of this, 16 hours of a workshop together that you're paying $10,000, $20,000 for. Bing, light bulb goes on. I get it. Yeah. That was such a critical investment. I can't do it. I don't have the resources. The Bobs are sniffing around. Yeah. So what did Dave do? So this is and feel free to interrupt me anytime, but I'm just going to set the scenario again.
Yeah.
How I had to solve this problem, TJ, was painful. It took me a while to do it. So I actually used the platform itself to be able to report on activities of individuals as they did things and pushed buttons in the system. So if TJ came in and you did this, and then you achieved this outcome, then that would trigger something else. And I would know you did it. Yay. Okay. And then I basically set up a whole, pinball machine, the wires under the board, everything's there. And if you go bounce around like the ball in the machine, you'll get all the outcomes, and you can see the outcomes. They happen physically. It's a lab.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it took me months and months and months and months. And then it's not just building that. It's like, how do you reset that? How do you make it applicable to somebody else's data? How do they bring their data into it? I had to build a platform. I had to code it.
Yeah.
And it was the most glorious thing in the world when it was done. It was working. But how could I even explain that to anybody? How could I replicate that? Now I have a new job. Now I need a platform to help me out. To paint that picture well enough?
I think you painted it quite well. And then the only thing I will add to it, as someone who also did training in a former life, is when you had to actually get that thing running, let's say on-prem. So you have to go do it. And then, oh, great, now I got to install things. Installing is always fun. But yeah, you're exactly right. It's fun being a relative term. I think all the things that you described are exactly spot on, in the sense that, if I hear what you're saying correctly, is the path to get that user to the light bulb to go off, and they go, yes, that's the classic, that's right. In essence, that's what we want to do as well. It's kind of funny. I don't know if you know that or not, but Instruqt was actually born out of a consulting engagement for HashiCorp, where they built Instruqt. The first rev of it was on arcade consoles, like 1980. We should have one here in the background just because. So it's cool. I'll send the link out for folks here on the call. You can see it. We have a video around it where it's you go up, there's a keyboard and there's a roller pad, and you're doing technical training, but it looks like an arcade console. And those still exist today. We have them at conferences and such. And the reason being is it's that fun kind of gamified approach is just such a natural hook for people to go wow, what's this all about? So even the people doing your pinball-esque kind of training that you wire together, isn't that kind of the same thing? It's hey, this learning's a journey, and let me see how I can attain the next couple things. we tend to take the same approach here. We like the challenge-based approach, which it's like get hands-on, try to break things, figure things out. There's checks, there's all those things. And the reason why they're there is the exact experience that you described. Like, to me, my favorite thing is when you can see a learner who tried the challenges like 6 times. You know what I mean? So they're doing a track and they went through and they're hitting the challenges, because in my mind, I can picture that person. They're really trying. They're trying to figure this thing out. Like, they probably have a pain point that they're trying to say, like, is this really what I need to do? But don't you think, like, having that ability to do that to learners is so much better than just putting a video up and hoping you got your message across?
Well, yeah.
Having something interactive where they're like, wow, this made them think. This made them, discern what you're trying to say.
Well, what you're talking about is the experiential side of learning.
Yes.
That technical learning, and this is something that Service Rocket we do a lot of. Right? My team in particular, and the extended team that we have does a lot of training, and we're training on really complex systemic, Linux, Unix environment things. You're setting up a database, you're setting up a web page, you're setting up Kubernetes, containers. And that kind of stuff, I want to go back in time to some of the other platforms that I've tried to learn in the past. Gosh, TJ, I remember being in the manufacturing plant. I worked in pharmaceutical. And at one point, I was this person who was doing this implementation. I don't even know what my title was at the time. The thing was, I was trying to learn this really technically sophisticated software. And to learn it, we had to go get shipped off to Washington, D.C., sit there for weeks, go through those labs. And then we come back and like, well, no, my data doesn't look anything like this.
Yeah.
And I did all this investment.
Yeah.
But I had to go physically to another place. I had to do the thing. It's not representative. That's where, like, I want to learn more about what is it that you do differently.
Well, I think what your example is the reason why we are who we are, which is the experience that we want to present. So we're able to present our customers' software solutions in a virtual sandbox environment. So it's the real deal. It's the real thing. It's like, here's how you run your software, whether it's SaaS-based. So like if you're a SaaS-based application, you can interact with your systems, or a more standard, like a Kubernetes application. And through that, once you have the user there, then as an educator, it's great because now as a content creation, that ability to say, like, okay, what do I want this person to learn? I had a similar experience as you. I remember when Oracle bought WebLogic, and I had to go for my first WebLogic training back in the day. Did the same thing. You had to travel somewhere. You're like, wow, this is a big deal. And then you get back home and you're like, oh, that's not how we have WebLogic configured at all. So the goal of Instruqt is to say, I as a content creator can present to you what our software looks like for real, in a real interactive environment, hands-on. You can load your data, you can do all kinds of creative things, because then now that that's done, I hate to say that's the easy part, because now as an educator, now you can, like, this is great. The doors are open. Now I can take that person through a database reindexing. I can't say that one. Exercise. Yeah. Rather than just say, here's the buttons for, your database. Here's how you roll back. Here's how you set up. It's like, okay, I'm going to now challenge you to write a database script that you will now execute against the database. And then you will roll back using the UI, because you're going to do a visual log output. Like, imagine that experience now as a learner. You're like, I can roll back on the database. I won't break anything. So you're giving them, you're like, please go ahead, get in there. And I know if I'm working for Acme and I'm trying to sell this software, that's going to sell software, right? Because now that person's going to do that experience and go, wow. And you were saying that earlier about our executive teams, our management teams. I think that conversation changes as well. I don't have to be, TJ don't have to be there if I'm trying to sell a piece of software. When like a developer has such a great experience, they go to their manager and go, oh, we've been having these problems with our database. I actually evaluated some software. I did their training and it solves XYZ. Now that even the developer is talking about business problems, it's cool because it's technical. And so that's what Instruqt allows people to do, is to create those great experiences where they can be interactive and hands-on. And I always go back to it. They can break things. It's like, get dirty, get in there, try the challenges. And after that, I think that's where all the other things follow, whether it's PLG driven, those types of things.
I like how you're painting this out. It's almost okay. So I want to take a different tact of this, because what I'm really interested in is me, right? I'm surveying this space of customer education. We're talking now about the language of business. We're not talking about pedagogy and adult learning theory and Kirkpatrick's. We are, but we're translating them, all of these education space concepts, into something intelligible by an executive. What's the strategy? I want people to use my darn software, and I want them to love it. That's our job in customer success, is, well, not to make customers love our software. I mean, we hear this all the time, but I call it the warm hug.
Yeah.
This is my fun about it is, I got a customer and they're in pain. And what do you do with somebody who's in pain and you really can't do much for them? You give them a hug. You empathize with them.
Yeah.
So now what we're able to do is now be the therapist. Hey, we got a 12-step program for you to learn how to use this platform. And for me, so how does this technology fit into a learning stack? What I mean by learning stack now is I may have a LMS, traditional, which is videos, SCORM. I'm going through a learning pathway, and I still think that's needed. If you're talking like a different formative type of learning, is this a complete and distinct tool that you would add into that ecosystem, or is it something that could be that ecosystem? I'm curious.
No, it's a good question. It's kind of funny that the spectrum of that answer, I look at our customer base, and it's kind of like a yes, yes, yes. So often, and I think, and this is just a rough cut of an answer, often our larger organizations have made investments in LMS systems, and they see gaps, which is, it's kind of like, whatever LMS system you have, they're phenomenal, but it gets a little bit what we started with is like, okay, you're going to learn Unix, cool, we'll give you that LMS has a welcome to intro to Unix track, and then it has a below, but it's missing that hands-on kind of experience of saying, like, here's how we do it here. And then I would say there's a significant amount of our customers that want to enhance their LMS with Instruqt, because they're like, this is really what carries you to the next level. And then we do have customers where they're like, we don't need an LMS, we have Instruqt, and Instruqt is the thing that basically is driving, because as I know, right, education isn't just a services thing that we charge for services, right? I think this whole podcast is about how can we leverage education across the organization. And again, I've been using Instruqt since 2018, so I'm a little biased here, but I know that you can use it for lead gen. Why? Because I can give this to a salesperson and they can do self test drives without the salesperson being on the call. And that same Instruqt track could be used for an onboarding exercise for a team that's never interacted with the solution. Because again, we're talking about our customer software running in Instruqt, not Instruqt itself. That portability, again, it's a great thing for our education people, because now their entire job experience is different. It's like, hey, as an educator, I'm not just servicing the service team who needs training because they're onboarding customers. Right. They're part of the customer journey as they grow. They're part of a pre-sales motion. They're a product marketing experience. And Instruqt just happens to do that very well, because again, it presents the software in a way, now the use cases are endless. Like the gentleman who runs our pre-sales organization always says, if you can dream it, you can build it at Instruqt. He's right in the sense that what business needs are you trying to solve? And let's get hands-on and let's build those experiences.
Okay, this is great. This is extremely valuable, because what I take away from what you're saying, TJ, is now we have, you're filling a hole in the learning stack that has been so unbelievably difficult to fill. And that's usually where, and let's go back in time. When 40, 50 years ago, when organizations were doing education, organizations have been doing customer education forever.
Of course.
And what we found out is that actually the concept of what we were calling customer education, which is a business to business or business to customer software organization, trying to get technology education in the hands of a wide field of customers.
Yep.
The problems they had then are the same problems they had today. How do we get people to learn? How do we get them to do things? how to get them to kick the tires, play,
Right.
and then have the confidence that this platform is going to do something. That's the whole name of the game, that we haven't been able to do that. It's like, okay, watch this video and go do something. Okay, well, my dream has always been, I don't want you to just go do something. From a strategic point of view, here's my world. Okay, I'm a leader, I'm a director of an education organization. Ideally, I have enablement internally. I have customers externally. I might have an associate in L&D. The problem is it's all about the product. It's all about the usage of the product, the use cases that the customer has, and how do they solve or satisfy such use cases. When I say use case, I mean a workflow. How do I get this thing done? I put a name on the thing. That journey requires so many bits and pieces. And that now when you're talking about introducing gamification for activities and things like that, I have a stack. I have an LMS. I might have two. I might have an internal and external LMS, and I won't get them necessarily. I have a Pendo or an AppQues or something that brings educational and video content into the platform that I'm doing itself. So that's a conveyance of learning. I have certification programs and things like that, which now we're talking about. Now I need to actually kick the tires and not just kick them. I need to be able to put them on, take them off.
Right.
And so the spectrum of learning, it requires such, I just can't be a teacher and show up in a classroom anymore. I've got all of these different tools. So your tool now unlocks another information opportunity where you're not just saying, okay, I built a lab, but you're actually showing Dave went and did this and he tried it 6 times. 6 times he succeeded. What does that tell us about the learning experience? You know, what does it tell us about the individual? Now I can show stats on, you know, on average, this is hard here and you're going to have a hard time doing it. And it might take you a couple times. You're okay with that.
Right.
Or it took this person 6 times and it takes everybody 6 times. We need to go back and fix our flow.
That's right.
So that's product development and pulling that back into my product team to say, did you see this? Because we have the constellation with the architecture behind the scenes to watch our customers fumble around through training examples. I can find that. And now I make my product better. Oh, this is so fun.
And imagine, this is an example. Often when I'm talking with like leadership teams, I try to frame it this way. So everybody has to, you know, every software company out there has to train their SEs to make them, you know, productive. And you alluded to it earlier around the technology where you, once you had learned it, you became an expert. You could like bend steel with that solution, right? The thing that I'll talk about leaders is they'll say, oh, do you have partners? Oh my goodness, we have partners. Oh, how do you onboard your partners? Oh, well, we have another division. And what they do is they do partner enablement. And you're like, let me guess. Because fundamentally, right, you and I know this, we want our partners to be like our SEs. We want them to be able to bend steel with the solution and understand it. So often when I'm talking about Instruqt, it's like, imagine if you had a internal onboarding program for your technical product is the same program you run for your partners. And like you just said, you can watch them from the background. It's like, okay, how well did they do? Are they going to be successful or not? That's, now you're talking about learning, right? Because it's portable, it's applicable on both sides. And like you said, you could have multiple systems. So yeah, maybe your partners go through a partner portal because that's what you've set up. Okay. Why does that matter whether, you know, your internal employees use your LMS system, your partners use different portal? Shouldn't they be able to use the same content so they all get really good at it?
Exactly.
So that's how I tried to frame this for people when I talk about education. Is like, stop thinking about education as like you had said it earlier in the show, and I was going to note that down, as like, education isn't at the end when the customer's ready to onboard and the software's set up. Education is literally at every point along the way. Like another one I'll use with leadership, they understand this, is when you have turnover, right? So yeah, so let's say your company buys this new software suite, it's a new ERP suite, let's say, right? And they transform the entire organization onto ERP. And in 6 months, you're going to have turnover. Those new people need to know, oh boy, how are they going to do it? So education is this ongoing thing, whether it's ongoing for your end customers or ongoing for yourself as an organization. You know, I use the military all the time. I think they lose like 1/8 of their staff every year. And it never shuts down. It never stops. Why? Because they have very strong hands-on training, experiential training. And that's kind of how it works. So it makes you laugh. Why do we do it different? Right.
Well, we call it, so we're starting to call this everboarding.
Everboarding. Yes. that term.
Not waterboarding, everboarding.
Water.
Waterboarding is the other side of that. No,
Yeah.
I mean, what you say, I'm glad to have these kinds of conversations, particularly now. Now we're at the end of the year. Let's frame it up as we start to do an outro here.
Yeah.
I want to talk to more leaders, and I'm not just talking mid leaders. If you are a mid leader, I want to talk to you, but senior leaders, executives, and have a conversation about the strategic value of education and how it infects, it insinuates itself into your entire culture. If you're missing the tools in your toolkit to practice, you are impoverishing everybody. Because, like you said, okay, I there's somebody out there right now I've been talking to about the partner enablement thing, and this exact scenario came up. Well, why are we treating our partners any different from our internal people? Or why aren't they consuming the same content that an end user would get? This is a pathway. We're building a learning pathway with it's a choose your own adventure to a degree, but it's Dave, am going to say, okay, partner or SE, sales engineer, you kind of got the same path. And or a implementation consultant, a professional services person. You got to know it all.
Yeah.
And the only difference between a partner and an internal resource is we don't pay them directly, we pay them indirectly. They're not part of our team, but that's where things start to break down. Yeah. Because when you can't see that human being on the other side who's a partner, who's doing the work for you, they know everything that you know, and they need to know it better. They need to be cranking it. Now, these people turn over all the time. And I think this is the inherent problem. This concept of churn is not singular. It's multivariate. Concept of churn, I think that we need to push up for customer success. This turns into a customer success show. Yep. But churn isn't a single dimension. It's not a linear thing. It's a multidimensional factor. Churn happens with our people. Churn happens with our customers. Churn happens with accounts, entire accounts. Churn happens with our partners. It's the emotion of human beings learning and in an environment together. If we don't have the tools to help move them through, like you were talking about the military, and the military has amazing training. I remember, this is a fun story. I was not in the military, but I had a company I ran called War Factory, very military-esque. It was video game tournaments that I would run. So naturally, I had just a tremendous number of people, hundreds of people come to these events, and the U.S. Army was a big sponsor of that. And it took me a little while to understand why, but they were very intrigued by these young people who were sophisticated in computer knowledge because, think drones. Yeah. They took me as an influencer to Fort Knox through a program and showed us how they do the boot camps, showed us how they do tank simulation training, went, through all of their stuff. They said, we want to show you how we do games and we want to show you how we train people. So we got to sit in the Abrams tank simulator and we got to go into the sim that, they give you the bag. You're going to get sick. And we went out in the field and watched the tanks move around and the instruction that was involved in that. And that's all education.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hands-on, it's experiential. And by the way, I bet when you got done with that, you probably weren't ready quite yet to run an Abrams, but you knew enough to be dangerous to say, like, this is pretty significant. Like, you understood mechanically how it was working. You understand the feedback.
Oh, to that point, TJ, okay, this is one of my favorite all-time stories. And I think it's evocative and it's of what we're trying to do here. So again, I can't talk about all the details, but I went in the simulator and the story was, I was talking with somebody about that simulator and they said, you know what? And this is a tech person. I can't remember where they were from. They were a heavy tech IT person and I'm nerding out. And they said, so one week we had the Boy Scouts in and they're smart kids and they went out and we said, just go play, have fun. So a group of them got it. And then you get to sit in all the positions and see and touch all the stuff and do all the interfaces. And TJ, it was unbelievable, the learning happening in this space. I still think about this. This is amazing. The people that were monitoring were like, oh my God, somebody just got a kill on the battlefield because they have this huge, it's a virtual reality thing, right?
Yeah.
But with the practical AR, you're like in the thing. And then they're just like, let's go. And they started throwing scenarios at these kids who were in the simulator, and they're just having, like, everybody's having a good time. What do they learn from this? Well, these young men were able to, men and women, sorry, were able to, one, learn the environment quickly, hands-on, did some training with the people that were there, all fulfilled a particular role. Like, you have the tank commander, you have the driver, they're separated. And I'm watching all this, like, think they didn't need the instruction that you would have had for the video or a drill sergeant. They needed hands-on, and they got it. And then it was a matter of coming back in and saying, okay, if they were in the Army now, or the whatever, they would be getting techniques and strategy and how to communicate together, but they know the physicality and the things that they need to touch well because they've already had that experience.
Yeah. I would bet too that, you start, a big phrase everyone says, I want them to speak the value of our products. Like, even in that small experience, the one person who's sitting at this station inside the tank, they needed information from somebody else in the tank who could give that to them, right? That's how those systems work. I worked in a gun mount in the Navy, right? So similar. I would need you to tell me something that I couldn't see. So here they are in the simulator, and all of a sudden, afterwards, they were laughing like, oh, they ran that scenario. I didn't know those planes were coming until you told me. Well, in a weird way, if you pull up from it, you're like, man, that sounds like value in a software solution if I've ever heard it. Is that right? And that to your point, it only comes to experience, and it comes from getting them excited, right? They're engaged, and that's magic. If you're able to do that at any point in imagine your organization now. Now let's put it back on the corporate world. Imagine if you had a software solution where your people that are kicking the tires have come to your website and get that excited. They're like, man, that was unbelievable. I was able to, log in. I was able to do XYZ. We can't do that. That's so important for us. That sounds like a pretty great experience for, PLG, for example. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to have meaningful conversations as that customer goes. So
it's tremendous. Oh, we could go on forever, TJ, but we can't. We got to go celebrate holidays and get out of here. Okay, with this, let's ease out here. TJ, again, I want to be able to have the audience connect with you. Where's the best place to find you? Where do you want people to go to here? Is it LinkedIn the best?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best to let's definitely reach out. And I promise, as I've said, I'm customer success. I get to do this for real. So I would love for folks to reach out and let's have conversations around what you're trying to do. And I can talk all day about what our customers and how they're solving problems. It's something I love to do, just because, again, it's fun. It's fun when you're able to do those things. I think that's the best way.
So I'll get your LinkedIn there. Reach out to TJ. Once again, let me share my own stuff. If you're interested in learning more about the customer education program we have here, these kinds of conversations, TJ, thank you so much for being on. And it's a great way to end the year and to look forward to the next year. How do we change the landscape of education and learning? How do we use it more as the lead gen, the funnel? How do we bring people in by having well-crafted, interesting experiences to learn from that they find, well, to be honest, some joy in? Because when you know that you're working out loud and you're solving the problems and you can see that light at the end of the tunnel, that's the future.
Yeah. I think if we're sitting here next year on December 23rd, the story that we know we're winning is when they say, these education teams, these folks that are building this content, that's where customers invested in 2023. They decided to double down and say, how do I make great customer experiences? And it's our educators. It's those kind of teams. That should be the headline for 2023. So when we're here a year from now, we'll say, wow, somebody finally listened.
Somebody finally listened. Oh, trust me, TJ, folks are listening. They're trying to solve problems. And with that, thank you again. Thank you, TJ. Get out there, learn, grow, find the others. Thanks for joining. Cheers.
Have a great holiday, Dave. Thank you.
Bye, TJ.